Hello, welcome to Ikate's Crossing as we continue our exploration of The Secret of Shambhala, the third book in the James Redfield Celestine Prophecy. Okay, so we're up to chapter 7, aren't we? So let's have a look at today's message in regards to chapter 7. And I'm using the Siddartha Tarot, an Ace of Pentacles. It's about knowing our potential. Knowing what we're actually capable of. Ooh, the words I got here were inner bliss, happiness, joy, peace. A sense of everything sort of coming together emotionally within ourselves. Super important here. Whoa! We've got the moon moving into new cycles, new possibilities, facing our fears, or neutralizing our fears, having this sense of a wish fulfilled. It does feel like everything's sort of coming together on some level. Okay. And we've got the sense of a new beginning in a journey. Okay, so what I've seen here is this is all about knowing our own potential, knowing what we're actually capable of, making sure that we face our fears, feeling like we're at peace, at bliss, at joy. We've got our wish fulfilled. We're fulfilling our wishes, our dreams, our goals, and we're starting. We're stepping out of the void into the light. So this is where we're at. So let's have a look at chapter 7, which is what we're up to. Entering Shambhala. I felt someone touching me, human hands wrapping me up and carrying me somewhere. I began to feel safe, even euphoric. After a while I smelled the sweet fragrance again, only now it was all-consuming, filling my consciousness. Try to open your eyes, a female voice said. As I struggled to focus, I was able to make out a figure of a large woman, perhaps 6.5 feet tall. She was pushing a cup towards my face. Here, she said, drink this. I opened my mouth and took in a warm, tasty soup made from tomatoes, onions, and some kind of broccoli that was sweet. As I drank, I realized my taste perception was enhanced. I could discern every flavor precisely. I drank most of the cup, and within moments my head cleared, and I could again focus on everything around me. I was in a house, or what seemed to be a house. The temperature was warm, and I was lying on a lounger made from a blue-green fabric. The floor was a smooth brown stone tile, and numerous plants and ceramic pots were sitting close by. Yet, above me were blue sky and the overhanging branches of several large trees. The dwelling didn't seem to have a roof or outside walls. You should be feeling better now, but you must breathe. The woman spoke spellbound. She was Asian in appearance, dressed in a colourful embroidered Tibetan ceremonial dress and soft-looking simple slippers. Judging from the depth of her gaze and the wisdom in her voice, she was about 40 years of age, but her body and movements gave her the appearance of a much younger person. And while her body was perfectly proportioned and beautifully shaped, every feature was exceptionally large. You must breathe, she repeated. I know that you know how to do this, or you wouldn't be here. Finally, I understood what she meant and began to breathe in the beauty of my surroundings and envisioned the energy coming into me. Where am I asked. Is this Shambhala? She smiled approvingly, and I could believe the beauty of her face. It was slightly luminous. I couldn't believe the beauty of her face. It was slightly luminous. Part of it, she replied. What we call the rings of Shambhala. Further to the north are the holy temples. She went on to tell me her name was Ani, and I introduced myself as she looked down on me. Tell me how you got here, she said. In a rambling way, I told her the whole story, beginning with a brief description of my talk with Natalie and Will, the insights of my trip to Tibet, including meeting Yin and Lama Rigdon and hearing about the legend, and finally finding the gateway. I even mentioned my perceptions of the light, apparently the work of the Dakini. Do you know why you are here, she asked. I looked at her for a moment. All I know is that I was asked to come by Will, and that it was important to find Shambhala. I was told there is knowledge here that is needed. She nodded and looked away, thinking. How did you learn such good English? I asked, feeling weak again. She smiled. We speak many languages here. Have you seen a man named Wilson James? No, she said, but the gateway can enter the rings at other places. Perhaps he is here somewhere. She had walked over to the potted plants and was pulling one of them closer to me. I think you must rest a while. Try to absorb some energy from these plants. Set in your field the intention that the energy is coming in, and then go to sleep. I closed my eyes, following her instructions, and within moments I drifted off. Some time later, a swooshing noise aroused me. The woman was standing in front of me again. She sat down on the edge of the lounger. What was that noise? I asked. It came in from outside. Through the glass? It's not really glass. It's an energy field that looks just like glass, but you can't break it. It hasn't been invented in the outer cultures yet. How is it created? Is it electronic? Partially, but we have to participate mentally to activate it. I looked out at the landscape beyond the house. There were other dwellings spread out over the gently rolling hills and meadows, all the way down to the flat valley. Some had clear outer walls like Annie's house. Others seemed to be made of wood in a uniquely designed Tibetan style. All were nestled unobtrusively into the landscape. What about those houses out there with different architecture? I asked. They're all created by a force field, she said. We don't use wood or metals any longer. We just create what we want with the fields. I was fascinated. What about the internal construction, water and electricity? We do have water, but it manifests right out of the water vapor in the air, and the fields power everything else we need. I looked outside again, disbelieving. Tell me about this place. How many people are here? Thousands. Shambhala is a very big place. Interested, I swung my legs off the lounger and put my feet on the floor, but experienced severe lightheadedness, my vision blurred. She got up and reached behind the lounger and handed me more soup. Drink this and breathe in the plants again, she said. I complied, and eventually my energy returned. As I took in more air, everything became even brighter and more beautiful than before, including Annie. Her face had become more luminous now, glowing from within, exactly the way I had seen Will look at times in the past. My God, I said, looking around. It's a lot easier to raise your energy here than in the outer culture, she commented, because everyone is giving energy to everyone else and setting a field for a higher culture level, she said. The phrase, higher culture level, with emphasis, as though it had some greater meaning. I couldn't take my eyes off the surroundings. Every form, from the potted plants close to me, to the colours of the floor tile, to the lush green trees outside, seemed to glow from within. All of this seems unbelievable, I stammered. I feel as if I'm in a science fiction movie. She looked at me seriously. Much science fiction is prophetic. What you see is simply progress. We're humans just like you, and we're evolving in the same way that you and the outer cultures will eventually evolve, if you don't sabotage yourselves. At that moment, a young boy about 14 ran into the room, nodding politely to me and said, Pema called again. She turned to him. Yes, I heard. Will you get our jackets and one for our guest? I couldn't take my eyes off the boy. His demeanour seemed much older than he looked, and his appearance was familiar. He reminded me of someone, but I couldn't remember who. Can you come with us? Annie said, breaking my stare. This may be important for you to see. Where are we going? I asked. To a neighbour's house, just to check things. She thinks she conceived a child a few days ago, and she wants me to check her out. Are you a doctor? We don't really have doctors because we no longer have the illnesses you're familiar with. We have learned how to keep our energy above that level. I help people monitor themselves and extend their energy and keep it that way. Why do you say it's important for me to see? Because you happen to be here at this moment. She looked at me as though I was dense. Certainly you must understand the synchronistic process. The young boy returned and I was introduced. His name was Tashi. He handed me a bright blue jacket. It looked exactly like an ordinary parka except for the stitching. In fact, there was no stitching at all. It was as if the pieces of fabric were simply pressed together. And surprisingly, even though the jacket felt just like cotton, it weighed almost nothing. How are these made? I asked. They're force fields, Annie said as she and Tashi walked through the walls with a whoosh. I tried to follow and bounced back from what felt like a solid piece of plexiglass. The boy outside laughed. With another swoosh, Annie came back in, almost smiling. I should have told you what to do, she said. I'm sorry. You must visualize the force field opening for you. Just intend it. I gave her a skeptical glance. Just see an opening in your mind, then walk through. I did as she described and then walked forward. I could actually see the field open up. It looked like a distortion in the space, something like a heat ray. One could see. With a swoosh, I walked through onto the outside walkway. Ani followed. I shook my head. Where was I? Following Tashi, we travelled along the winding path that moved gradually down the slope of a hill. As I glanced back, I saw that Ani's house was almost totally hidden by trees, and then something else grabbed my attention. Near the house was a square, black, metallic-looking unit the size of a large suitcase. What is that? I asked Ani. That's our power unit, she replied. It helps us heat and cool the house and set the force fields. I was totally confused. What do you mean, helps you? She was walking in front of me as we continued down the slope. She slowed down and let me walk up beside her. The power unit by the house doesn't create anything by itself. All it does is amplify the prayer field. You know about to a higher level, so that we can then manifest what we need directly. I looked at her askance. Why does this sound so fantastic? Ani asked, smiling. I told you it is merely progress. I don't know, I said. During all this time of trying to reach Shambhala, I guess I never gave much thought to what it would be like here. I guess I thought it was going to be just a group of high lamas in meditation somewhere. This is a culture with technology. It's fantastic. It's not the technology that matters. It's how we have used the technology to help build our mental powers that is important. What do you mean? All this is not as outlandish as you think. We merely discovered the lessons of history. If you look closely at the human story, you can see that the technology has always been just a precursor for what could eventually be done with the human mind alone. Think about it. Throughout history, people created technology to enhance their ability to act and be comfortable in the world. In the beginning, it was only pots to hold our food and tools to dig with. With more sophisticated houses and buildings to create these items, we dug up ores and minerals and fashioned them into what we envisioned in our mind. We wanted to travel more effectively, so we invented the wheel, and then the vehicles of various sorts. We wanted to fly, so we made airplanes that helped us do it. We wanted to communicate more rapidly over great distances anytime we wished, and so we invented wires and telegraphs, telephones, wireless radios, television, to let us see what was happening in another location. She looked at me questioningly. See the pattern? Humans invented technology because we wanted to reach out to various places and connect with more people, and we knew in our hearts that it was possible for us to do that. Technology has always been just a stepping stone to what we can do ourselves. What we knew was our birthright. The true role of technology has been to help us build the faith that we can do all these things ourselves with our inner power. So in the early history of Shambhala, we began to involve technology to consciously serve the development of the human mind. We realized the true potential of our prayer fields and began to recraft our technology to merely amplify our fields. Here in the rings, we still use their amplification devices, but we are right on the brink of being able to turn them off and just use our prayer fields to manifest everything we need or want to do. Those in the temple can already do this. I wanted to ask you more questions, but as we rounded a bend, I saw a wide creek running down the hill to our right. The sound of rushing water echoed ahead. What's that sound? I asked. There's a waterfall up there, she said. Do you feel you need to see it? I didn't quite know what she meant. Do you mean intuitively? I asked. Of course I mean intuitively, she replied, smiling. We live by intuition. Tashi had stopped and was looking back. Annie turned to him. Why don't you go tell Pema we're coming. He smiled and ran on ahead. We climbed up the rocky slope to our right, moving closer to the stream and pushed through some until we came to the edge of the water. The stream was 25 feet wide and flowing briskly. Through the limbs to our left, I could see the water going over a ledge. Annie motioned for me to follow. We walked along the stream and down several tiers of rock until we were just below the falls. From here, we could see the 50-foot drop into a large pool below. A movement caught my eye, and I moved out to the edge of the rock to look down. To my surprise, through the mist and the spray at the end of the pool, I could see two people walking towards each other, both surrounded by a soft, pinkish white light. Even though the light wasn't very bright, it was remarkably dense, especially around their shoulders and hips. I strained to make out the full outlines of the two people, and when I did, I realized they were naked. Ooh! So this is what you brought me up here to see, Annie asked, amused. I couldn't take my eyes off what was happening. I knew that I was watching the energy fields of a man and a woman. As they approached each other, the fields merged until they were embracing. Finally, ever so slowly, I saw another light forming in the midsection of the woman. After a few minutes they separated, and the woman felt her stomach. The tiny light grew brighter, and the two embraced again, and seemed to be talking, but I could hear nothing but the waterfall. Without warning, both people simply disappeared. I realized that they'd been making love, and I became embarrassed. Who were those people? I asked. I didn't recognize them, Arnie replied, but they're from the region somewhere. It looks as though they'd conceived a child, I said. Do you think they intended to? She burst into a chuckle. This isn't the elder cultures. Of course they intended to conceive. At these levels of energy and intuition, bringing a soul onto the earth is a very deliberate process. How did they disappear like that? They travelled there by projecting themselves mentally through a travel field. The amplification device allows us to do that. We found that the same electromagnetic field that sends television pictures can be used to actually link the space of a remote location to the space where we are. When we do that, we can simply look at a scene wherever we want, or actually walk through to the other site using our amplified prayer field. The wormhole theorists in the outer cultures are already working on such theories now, only they aren't fully conscious of what it will lead to. I just looked at her, trying to absorb the new information. You look overwhelmed, she said. I nodded, managing a smile. Come on, I'll show you at Pema's. Okay, that's it for today. Don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Take care, and blessed be.